So welcome everyone to our webinar. I will just stop our screen sharing for 1 second so you can see all our speakers in full size. So I would ask our speakers just to activate their video. So welcome to everyone to our webinar on community-based finance for affordable housing. Thanks for joining in from so many places. We will spend the next 1.5 hours or so together to look at some examples, experiences of community-based housing finance together. This is a webinar that is launched at the initiative of UrbaMonde and Center for Affordable Housing Finance in Africa, CAF, and it is co-hosted by the CoHabitat Network and the African Union for Housing Finance. My name is Bea, and I'm a member of UrbaMonde. So just before we get started, just a bit of housekeeping as usual. So you have translations, French and English available at all times. To activate those, you just have to click on that globe that says interpretation or traduction in French on your screen, and then you choose your channel. If you have any questions with that, please just drop us a line in the chat or, to reach out to us if you have technical issues with that. So we will be taking questions during the presentations and also afterwards. You can use for that the Q&A section that you can reach also on the bottom of your screen, or you can directly post them in the chat. Either way is fine. We will gather your questions during the webinar. If you have any other questions, technical issues, please also just drop a line in the chat and we will try to assist. To our speakers, just a small reminder from our translators, if you can speak relatively slowly, that helps them to, just follow up and do their work properly. So thanks for that. And I suggest we just get started. And for that, I would just start sharing my screen again, and then I will give the floor to Marine from the Center for Affordable Housing Finance, who is co-hosting this event, for a few introductory words. Over to you, Marine.
Merci beaucoup, Béa, et bonjour à tous.
Thank you very much, Bea, and good morning to you all. My name is Marine Bienveillant. I am a project manager for CAF, and we've carried out this study on which this meeting is based in partnership with UrbaMonde and UrbaSEN. I would like to quickly share some words on CAF and also on the objective of this webinar. CAF is a Center for Affordable Housing Finance, is a think tank which has been created in 2014, and its mission is to make operational financial market in terms of housing in Africa, especially for vulnerable populations. CAF has various tools, and we are doing this in particular by carrying out studies on this matter, by sharing also these studies and proposing a strategic support to the various actors of the sector. Our objective is to strengthen capacity or build capacity and knowledge of the actors of the sector, facilitate investment in affordable housing and its financing on the African continent. Let's also note that as Bea was saying, she mentioned African Union for Housing, AUHF, and CAF is the secretariat of that organization, which represents the financing of housing in Africa, and we commend all the members of the organization on the continent. As its name entails, CAF is focused on housing finance. That was the bottleneck which led to a great deficit in Africa, which could be estimated at 50 million units. And that deficit is increasing due to urban growth and also the growth of the population as a whole. We consider that housing finance is critical on the continent where bancarization is still poor and land management doesn't allow to carry out mortgage for a big part of the population, and saving was not also possible. So housing finance is at the end of the housing value chain. We've carried out a study on this value chain, and it shows all the stakeholders who are participating. So little by little, we've extended our work in order to to be interested promoters, governments, constructors, and banks, which were our focus in the beginning. So the challenge is to move together with all these stakeholders and with the same ambition, which is to give access to housing to all. We need to move together, and that's a challenge. And this being said, one of the important thing that we forget in this whole system is the end user himself. And thanks to this study, we've been organizing this kind of webinars, and we would like to bring back population at the center of this issue and make this housing affordable. And I hope that through this webinar, you can draw lessons regarding this topic. Thank you, and fruitful deliberations.
Merci, Marine. Thank you. So, as Marine said, we realized we did this short case study on 10 examples of what we call community-based finance, and I would just like to take really 1 minute to tell you a bit more what we understand under community-based finance in this context. So, as Marine said, one of the main bottlenecks for producing affordable housing or incrementally improving that housing is, of course, the access to finance. And this is particularly true for vulnerable households or low-income households. And oftentimes, the financial products that are available are neither adapted to their housing processes nor really target them because they may consider they're not creditworthy, or for many other reasons. So but what we do see as well is that there are solutions out there, that there are experiences out there that are based and rooted in community practices, or what Marine called the end users, the residents, practices in building their homes or improving them. And this is what we will broadly understand as community-based finance solutions here. So any kind of initiatives that are rooted or based in how communities work together, how families save and incrementally improve their housing situations with and without help. And really these community-based finance solutions can be promoted by CBOs or community-based organizations, but also NGOs, bigger, smaller nonprofit organizations, even private sector organizations, savings cooperatives, so all sorts of actors, and they can be really located anywhere from very formal solutions to very informal ones. So anyways, I was just summing up that these community-based solutions can be ranging anywhere from very formal to informal solutions, and that we, through these case studies that we did last year, we tried to look at very different types of solutions and experiences. And today we would like to look in more depth or in more detail at 3 of them. And for that, we have 3 guests and panelists here with us today from different countries and representing, of course, different organizations. So we have Magatte Diouf with us, who is a project manager at UrbaSEN in Senegal. Magatte is a geographer and urban planner. She would describe herself as an activist urban planner who supports the Senegalese Federation of Inhabitants in Senegal, and has been doing that for a few years. She has also worked on urban planning and resettlement projects across Senegal for the past years, before joining UrbaSEN, that is a non-profit organization. Welcome, Magatte, bienvenue. We also have Richard today with us. Welcome, Richard. Thanks for being here. Richard is the CEO and co-founder of Casa, which is a social enterprise providing affordable housing solutions in Mozambique. Richard has 15 years of experience in international development and a master in urban management, development, housing, and livelihoods. Thanks for being with us today, Richard. We will hear more about your experience in just a few minutes. And we have Patience with us. Patience is the Executive Director of Dialogue and Shelter for the Homeless Trust in Zimbabwe. Welcome, Patience. Glad to have you on board as well. The mission of the Dialogue and Shelter for the Homeless Trust is to support the social cohesion among marginalized communities, improve the livelihoods through community organization, and the Dialogue on Shelter is facilitating that process, and also networking and partnering with various housing associations. I think we have a technical issue again. Does it work now? Yes, I think it should be fine. Sorry. So we will have 3 rounds of questions. So we will have sort of a dialogue with our panelists, and then we will take questions from you, as I said. So at all times, please drop them in the question and answer section or in the general chat, and we will try to come back to all of them if possible during this webinar. So let's jump into our first question, and I would like to give the floor to Magatte for that. Magatte, à toi. So the first question, we would be interested just in learning a bit more about, you know, what's the background you're working in, and what is this financial mechanism that you're promoting? Who are the beneficiaries? To get a general idea of, you know, the financial mechanism you're operating. À toi, Magatte.
D'accord, d'accord. Merci, merci Béa. Donc, nous, notre mécanisme de.
Thank you, Bea. So our financing mechanism is a fund that is for urban renewal and our background is we are in informal and non-planned settlements in the suburbs of Dakar. So these are places that are exposed to different risks, including flooding risk. And this is actually why we created this rotating fund. So it's a fund that comes from different donors, and that is funding the reconstruction of houses, but also which is building community infrastructure. And we work with community-based organizations that are part of an organization which is called the Senegalese Inhabitants Association. So let me tell you a little bit more about the mechanism. Is that what you want? Yes, maybe, and if you could just speak a little bit, go a little bit slower for our interpreters. So the urban renovation fund, which is also called the rotative fund, is co-managed by an NGO called UrbaSEN, which is the technical arm of the Senegalese Federation of Inhabitants, and also by the federation itself. And within that federations, we find community-based organizations. So among the groups, if somebody wants to renovate their home, they will just have to fill out a form, a needs expression form. Whether they want to, if they want to rebuild any part of their house, they will just have to fill out a form. And the members of the federation have a saving system that has been in place for a while. So this system used to exist in the past, but we actually formalized it when we arrived.
Des outils communs.
Called it housing savings now. So those groups have these saving mechanisms, and they have all the documents that they use in their work. And with that, they can actually manage their savings and also all the payments and also all the revenue generating activities that are funded by these cotizations that they have, the scheme that they have. So we help inhabitants with the rebuilding of their homes. So once the needs have been identified, we have what we call a teamwork, and in that team, and in that team we have civil engineering, civil engineers, and also we have the beneficiary. So together they will go look at the house and see what are the needs and what needs to be done in the house. So what you're seeing here is an example of a case where the technician is visiting the house with the beneficiary to see what needs to be done. So once they fill out the form, they come back and then they create a code where they put the prices for everything that will be needed for rebuilding the house. And after that, the manager of the rotative fund will then record the request in the database, which is called UrbaBase. And in that database, we have the list of all the members of the group. So from there, a file is created, and then also we decide on how the money is going to be paid back by the beneficiary. Then from there, the federation will finance the rebuilding of the house, and we have a technical team that goes on the field on a regular basis to check how work is progressing in the house, how the construction work is progressing. And also they're making sure that all the prices that have been in the code are actually being respected. So for here, in this case, for example, this home did not have any toilets. So thanks to the federation and to the association, they were able to build toilets in their home, and then they will be paying by installments. So for this one, it's there. They will pay in 20 installments. So this is what we do. Once the requests have been identified and the code have been established, then the federation is going to withdraw the money from the fund, from the common fund, and then they will use it, and then they will fund the group the beneficiary belongs to. And for example, we have 5% of interest. There's an interest rate of 5% that goes back to this fund. So for example, if 1 million is disbursed for reconstruction, the fund will actually give 1,050,000. So an extra 5%. And out of this 5%, 1% is coming back to the group. 1% is going back to the FSH, and 2% are returned or repaid to the rotating fund, and 1% is used for the bank transactions and bank fees. And after that, the beneficiary then will pay
un mois de différé. Donc, c'est exactement comme ça que fonctionne ce mécanisme de financement.
a loan in a period of 20
les
months.
caisses rotatives des groupements.
And they will have 1 month, and this way we can actually reinforce the funds of the rotating fund. And today we have a huge demand for reconstruction because the federation has today 546 organizations, community-based organizations, and there's on average 35 members per organization. So that's a total. That's enough. So this fund makes it possible to fund all these renovation works. And currently we have 800 units, housing units that have been rebuilt using this funding mechanism, because these populations that are mainly in the informal sector do not have access to the regular financing from the banking system. So this system actually allows them to solve those issues that they have at local level without actually having to borrow too much and facing subsequent problems. So this is the financing mechanism that we use for our fund in Senegal. Thank you, Magatte. I'm just going to take one question. What is the duration of the loan in terms of how long before people actually pay back? Actually, the maximum we can actually land is 1 million, and the payment period is 20 months. So that means that if you receive the 1 million this month, you will not have to pay anything next month. It's only the following month that you start paying. So thank you, Magatte. So that's 1 million CFA. We will come back on the other aspects of these mechanisms, but for now, I'm going to let Richard give his presentation. So
in Mozambique, and Casa as a social enterprise that produces affordable housing. Over to you.
As the introduction before, my name is Richard Bahumwire, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Casa together with Mario Dill and Andrew McLean. I live in Mozambique. Originally, I'm from Uganda, but we started Casa in 2018, registered from the scratch, as I will be sharing with you. And we have been working closely with the municipality of Beira, and we receive some funding from Rio, UK, and has been able to help us to be what we are up to this time and help people to achieve their dreams in accessing affordable housing in Beira. Before we established Casa, we started with a project, and this project was based on the survey we did. And in the survey we did, we wanted to understand first, before we start building affordable housing, we started to understand the context of housing in Mozambique and how they afford to buy houses and which houses they buy from the market. And we started with a showcase, which immediately after the completion, can you put on full screen? Yeah, go forward. So this is the house this is the project we designed, and in the baseline survey, we wanted to find out the housing situation and the housing market. And we found out what was key, that the cheapest house in the market was being sold at $55,000. And so we worked closely with the municipality, and we designed a house, the cheapest house. Of course, it is an integrated community. We designed the cheapest house to be sold, and we are selling it at $10,000. Of course, nobody believed that in Mozambique, one can build and sell as a company, as a private developer, a $10,000 house, except this man who is in black, who was the mayor by then, who passed away. He's the only person who made us strong on the ground, and him being the mayor, including his team, his technical team, didn't believe, including the banks, including buyers themselves, never thought that we would build and sell a house at $10,000. So it was a big challenge to get everyone on board and convince them, but of course we integrated the design and got it approved, and we established Casa by that time, after starting with a showcase of 10 units that we needed to demonstrate. We needed to prove the concept, and we needed to also build the market. Go forward. Next slide. So shortly after the showcase, we got the biggest challenge where the city of Beira was hit by Cyclone Idai, and part of the whole city, part of our houses were affected a little, but the city was destroyed, especially the houses, 90% of the houses were destroyed. And so from that time, because our houses, we didn't plan to build them to resist cyclone, but they were good quality houses. And then we started integrating the cyclone resistant techniques, and we were trained, our building team was trained by a team of missionaries from Australia, where Australia, they have lots of experience in cyclone resilience. And so we started integrating cyclone resilience building techniques, especially having resilient roofs and having good quality houses. Of course, this is also one of the reasons that our project has been so outstanding, because we build resilient homes, and most of the cyclones after they die, we've been having lots of cyclones passing through Beira, but our houses have been of good quality. And so having good quality homes is also another thing that we would talk in the next webinar, that when you have a good quality home, then it is resilient, and then you are able to have even tenants having to live without spending extra maintenance and future as soon as possible expenditures. And also, if you are to attract funding, attracting the banks to fund the communities to buy the houses, actually the banks need very good quality homes that then you can have them being mortgaged. But of course, we didn't have only the cyclone as the biggest challenge. But in the next slide, if you can move next, these are some of the houses that that we completed. Go forward. We have a big problem in Mozambique of end user finance. End user finance is not only a problem in Senegal, it's not only a problem in Zimbabwe, in Africa, but end user finance in the whole continent is a big problem that majority have no access to mortgage financing because of the cost, especially here in Mozambique. So when you start talking about a person who is earning like $10,000 is a big problem. I mean, 10,000 Meticash is a big problem to access finance. The structures, not only that people, when I'm talking to people from Europe, they get to think that people cannot pay. I normally tell them that this is not true. The people can pay, but the structures around them, the systems around them to access funding is a big problem. For example, if you talk about the interest rates, in Mozambique, the prime lending rate is 18%. So 18%, if you add then the bank other charges, then you have already knocked out like 50% of the population to accessing this funding. And then the other one is 20% down payment. So you look at how many people actually can put the down payment before they even think about paying for their homes. And again, the other biggest challenge that we have been finding together with the banks when we start to work is proving the bankability of the homes, the buyers. People receive income, but they can't prove, like you find people are having shops, people are selling merchandise, people have some stalls, and people have some food stores, but they cannot say every month they are receiving this, they are spending this. So it becomes very hard that then the banks, when you talk to them to provide lending to these people, you find that they are only looking at people who have salary, who can spend, who can earn. The last time when I was discussing with the banks, they told me they have a ceiling below which then they cannot provide a mortgage to these people. And here is about 60,000, is about $1,200. That so below that they cannot start talking about mortgage financing. And then you start asking yourself, how many people can actually afford that? So with Casa Real, when we started this project, then we started looking, we have experimented different selling payment models, including paying cash, including paying with mortgage, including including paying in phases, in installments. But recently we started testing the rent to buy, and the rent to buy here, we will have families. We have already experimented families paying as starting to pay rent, and then they build their credit history, and possibly like for 3 years or 4 years. And then we have an MOU with the bank ABSA that in the end, then the remaining of the money will be paid by the bank. And we are also working with Empower to really take this to scale. We have already a pipeline project that we are looking at putting first 30 units to then do the rent to buy. And then the money that people will be paying in rent as rentals every month, we collect them and then we repay to Empower. Next slide, please. Yeah, some of the images of the homes that we have built, the drone images. Next. We have had the community already set. You can see we are integrating the solar street system, street lighting, and we use solar. If you look on the side, we have people already living in these houses. And when we're designing them, we design them to the incremental building process, and we get the incremental building plan approved. And then the person lives in a, for example, $10,000 house, and then in the end will increment to add more space as they get funding. Next slide. Yeah, so going to scale, we've been working not only with Rio, but with also Empower, and we are now integrating the eco-friendly building using different types of technologies, using different eco-friendly features. Like on the right, we have the conventional construction that we were working with the municipality. So we added other eco features like using solar instead of electricity to save energy. And also these units that we are building now, we are connecting them to a decentralized water treatment system, that then the water that is treated is reused during the summer, like to irrigate the compounds and maybe reflush the toilets. And also recently we tested a cross-laminated timber home, which on the left you can see using treated timber. And we hope that this is going to possibly attract more climate-friendly financing, and then we can, to scale, provide more affordable housing to our communities. Next. For more information, please, you can reach out to our website. This is our website. You can check our website and then you can get more information. And if there is any question, please, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard, for this very insightful presentation. Then, Patience, if I can ask you to come in And I will just reshare my screen so that you can see here. There we go. So Patience, over to you to tell us a bit more about the experience in Zimbabwe with the Zivarazevka upgrading scheme.
Thank you very much, Pia, for the opportunity. I'm going to talk about the Gungano Urban Poor Fund. This is a fund that is wholly owned by a network of people who live in informal settlements in Zimbabwe. The name of the network is Zimbabwe Homeless People's Federation. Currently, it is more than 710 women-led saving groups. And the focus, or the pillar of this Gungano Urban Poor Fund are women-led savings. Women, they meet weekly, who are part of this network, and they save for different purposes. And they save $1 US per month, specifically for upgrading initiatives in their settlements and also in their other settlements where the network is present. So the fund where they save collectively their money is what is called the Gungano Urban Poor Fund. So it's wholly owned by savings from the different collectives, and it is managed and governed by members of this network. They set the rules. They, with our support of Dialogue on Shelter as the NGO, we support them in coming up with manuals for the operation of the Gungano Urban Poor Fund. And we have used this fund to engage both central government and the city government, specifically the city of Harare. We use these women's savings to demonstrate to the city and to the government the capabilities and abilities of women-led collectives to participate in the co-production of basic services in urban areas, including savings, including shelter, water, sanitation, etc. So that's exactly what we did in a settlement called the Zivarazevka Extension. We approached the city of Harare to demonstrate the ability of the community using the Gungano Urban Poor Fund records, and then we asked the city to partner the Alliance of the Federation in Dialogue on Shelter in developing, doing an in situ upgrading of the settlement called Zivarazevka. That top picture shows the settlement when it was just starting to upgrade, and the bottom picture shows the status of the community now. And so we signed a memorandum of understanding with the city of Harare, and armed with this memorandum of understanding, we managed to leverage resources from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that came in to support the infrastructure as well as the construction of demonstration units in this settlement of about 408 households. But what is interesting is from this fund, together with the city, create the Harare Slum Bridging Finance Facility initiatives of the urban poor who can of any of the and these funds are given as a loan, which is managed by the city of Harare as well as the Zimbabwe Homeless People's Federation. And we give very small incremental loans where you can build even one room, but one stage at a time. You get a loan up to slab level, you repay it, you get another one up to roof level, and then you get another one to finish. That way we have lowered the bar, the entry point for poor communities to be able to access finance mechanisms, finances that they can afford. And so we have created a revolving fund out of this support. So when the Bill and Melinda Gates funded project ended in 2016, the Harare Slum Upgrading Finance Facility remained functional, and it is functional to date and is continuing to give funds. So our intention is for any other funding partners to inject not so much into grants per se, but to help in capitalizing the Harare Slum Upgrading Finance Facility, which currently is not only financing shelter developments in Zimbabwe, but also in other settlements in and around Harare. So in short, that's how the Gungano Urban Poor Fund has been used to leverage resources internally within the country and externally to be able to facilitate a demonstration project on in situ slum upgrading in Zimbabwe. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Patience.
Over to you, Bia.
Yes, thank you. We will hear a bit further on this experience just a bit later. And so I think what is quite remarkable about these three experiences is that sort of facing the inadequacy of the housing systems that you were confronted with, you managed to build sort of other systems or your own systems, financial solutions, housing solutions. So what I would be interested to learn about, because we've heard from Richard just the importance of these different partnerships that you were able to build, with the ABSA Bank, with the city of Beta. So I would also like to hear a bit more from Patience about how you managed to convince the city of Harare to contribute even to that fund, how you work with national governments, how you build all these partnerships around the Gungano Urban Poor Fund. If you could just give us some insights on this, Patience.
Yes, thank you, Bia. It was a long process to engage the city of Harare to participate in the upgrading of informal settlements in Harare. Traditionally, they've always resorted to and demolitions without an alternative. So there have been cycles of informal settlers, houses and settlements being demolished, and they would go into hiding, as it were, and a few days later they will come back, maybe on the same site or on a different site. So the city was also finding it very frustrating, in as much as the communities were also finding it very difficult to live such a space. So when we approached the city of Harare, it was to seek a mutually beneficial arrangement that would see communities with secure tenure, and at the same time would also see the Harare City Council increasing its housing stock. So what we first did was to ask the city to assign a specific officer who would be responsible for handling issues that are in relation to informality in Harare. Because Harare does not have a department that serves informal dwellers. So the city fortunately agreed, and then we were using this contact person to reach all departments of the city that have a contribution to make towards the improvement of the life of people who live in settlements. And using this method, we then asked to expose city officials and makers, the councillors, the mayor, to different projects around the world, which were being run by cities in partnership with their communities, especially communities of the urban poor. So we went on a number of international exchanges, Cape Town, I think India, places like that, Kenya, to show what other countries were doing. And when we came back, there was a lot of enthusiasm in terms of putting into practice some of the lessons that we had jointly learned. And so our first starting point was to agree with the city of Harare whether we had slums in Harare in the first place, because that was a very contentious issue. Ultimately, we agreed that we had slums, and we proceeded to profile all the slum settlements, as well as to do door-to-door surveys of some of these settlements. At that point, we counted more than 63 settlements in Harare. It sounded very overwhelming in terms of upgrading. Where do you start? Because the city was also saying they didn't have any resources. But what we then did is, armed with this knowledge and with this common understanding of the challenge of informality in Harare, and a memorandum of agreement in 2010, I think, with the city of Harare. Later on, we turned it into a memorandum of, firstly, we started with a memorandum of understanding, then we signed a memorandum of agreement. So it was groundbreaking in the sense that the city mayor was signing an agreement with representatives of informal settlements from a position where these two parties were not seeing eye to eye, were always in conflict over evictions. Now they were sitting on the same table, signing an agreement. And part of these partnerships efforts were recognized by the UrbaSEN, and the then mayor of Harare was given a UrbaSEN award for the city of Harare managing to work positively with communities that they were previously in conflict with. So after signing the memorandum of agreement, we then demonstrated to funding partners that the city was committed to working with urban communities that are poor and marginalized in a much more inclusive manner. So those are the, and we then created a structure that was, we call it the project management team, that is made up by all representatives by representatives from all the 9 departments, I think, of the city of Harare, as well as representatives from the community. And we Dialogue on Shelter also sits on on this management committee, which was spearheading the development of a pilot project, but also looking beyond the pilot project. So the process of engagement, that's how we started, until we got to a stage where the community, through the Zimbabwe Homeless People's Federation, put forward their money, $30,000, and asked the city to contribute towards a fund specifically for upgrading initiatives. So the city ended up putting 120, I think, $1,000 US, and Dialogue on Shelter put $50,000 US. So the Harare Slum Upgrading Finance Facility was then started using this seed capital of $200,000 US. And it's a revolving fund which is continuing to revolve and to give loans specifically for house improvement, but also for livelihoods to the various communities, not only in Zimbabwe, but in any of the 63 slum settlements that we jointly identified with the city of Harare. And what has been beneficial to all parties concerned is that the city has increased its housing stock, meaning its rateable properties. There are more rateable properties in Harare, and the residents of Zimbabwe and similar upgraded communities are now paying rates and contributing to the city fiscus. But for the communities, people have managed to get security of tenure and improve the services, water, sanitation, energy, because the fund also gives loans for solar projects, housing projects, and improved water, solarized boreholes, and also even an improvement in social amenities such as play centers, community, and a community hall for those settlements. And for the universities, this project has been studied many times by different students, from undergraduates to postdoctorate students. So it has provided a lot of learning materials to anyone who's interested. And it has been an international award-winning project, so it has been mutually beneficial, not only to the people that are directly involved in the project, but we are also seeing an offshoot of this, what happened in Zimbabwe now taking place in another community. And we are currently using the partnership with Harare City Council, upgrading a settlement called Tafara Fedland, and the process is continuing. So thank you very much, Pia.
Thank you, Patience. It's really quite impressive how you managed to mobilize all these different stakeholders, get those financial inputs even in seed funding, which we feel is oftentimes the big issue. How do you get actually the money into these funds and get it going or increase its scale? So maybe I would just rapidly like to hear also from Magatte a bit more details about how you collaborate with local, national governments, different institutions, so that we can get that bigger picture as well of your experience. Magatte, please.
Au niveau local déjà,
at the local level, in our municipalities of intervention, we are trying to sign an MOU with territorial collectivities before carrying out any activity in the municipalities perimeter. So this it is always the inhabitants who help us so that we can meet the local authorities and present to them the activities of our NGO and propose an agreement in which we support them technically in order to make available decision-making tools such as the mapping and planning documents and diagnosis document, etc. That is at the local scale. And this helps us today to sign 15 MOUs with 15 municipalities in the various municipalities of Dakar and CS. At the macro level, that is at the level of the various branches of the government, such as ministries and technical services, as part of global projects like the 100,000 housing project, we've been able to sign an MOU with the Ministry of Urbanism after presenting the funding mechanism by the rotative fund in order to show them that it's possible for vulnerable populations to have access to housing by using uh, mechanisms that have been developed in the municipalities. And this allowed them to guide the various conditions of access to the vulnerable populations in this 100,000 housing program. And today they've supported us in the formalization in the cooperative of housing, and the negotiations are ongoing in order to benefit them more from these government programs. So we have MOUs with municipalities and the concentrated services of the government, ministries, urbanism services, and this facilitates our intervention, especially in the public space, because in the beginning we were only involved in rehabilitation of houses, but finally we found out that housing is uh, a total component. We have the streets and all other things to take care for. Here, for example, we have a space. We've rehabilitated this space so that people could go there and play. Children can play over there, and people could go and rest. And the inhabitants have been able to carry out land planning activities in order to remove uh, garbage and use these spaces for uh, other functions or operations. This is an example of uh, this facility we've built in Rifisque. We have also transitory uh, facilities which supports big works of the government like the train and the rapid transfer bus with the integration of local materials in the construction. We use here plants which grows in basins that have been dug following the inundation, I mean the floods of 2009. So we are including environmental aspects and ecological aspects in the building of our facilities, and playing grounds, entertainment places, renovation. And all this, we include also sanitation management, because these neighborhoods don't have any management of sewage waters. We have aquifers which are in danger, and through this planning, we contribute in improving the living framework. And all this is co-financed and co-managed by the inhabitants of these communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Magatte. And just a last question to the three of you before then really handing over to our audience, because there's lots of questions coming in. So just in 2 or 3 sentences each, if you could just give us an idea or an outlook of what would be like your next steps or your vision for the future. And maybe I'll start with Richard, if you want to say a few words on that, please. We can't hear you yet. Maybe you're just muted.
You hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah,
fine,
so we are now on the road to scale up, not only in Beira. In Beira, we had the first project. Now we are designing to start next month the second project. And we are also planning to scale up to other parts of the country. We are starting with different cities that we are talking to the municipalities. We want to keep talking to municipalities, because we have now proven that to be successful in affordable housing, you need to work with the municipal to help speed up the process, the approvals, and also because in Mozambique, land is quite still in the hands of the government. So we get the municipality to contribute the land. So we will scale up. And of course, we keep integrating some eco features, eco building, in order to ensure that we are working to preserve the environment in the future. We are scaling up also the rent to buy. I saw lots of questions about rent to buy, how viable it is. It's not an easy thing to start rent to buy as a developer, because all your funding will be stuck in the rentals. So we, as Casa Real, are not working to use our capital to be stuck in the development. Otherwise, then we don't build anymore. So that's why we are working with Empower. So Empower is like an institution like the bank on the side to take out the finance. So we build, and then Empower provides funding for this rent to buy. So those are 2 different funding streams. That the funding that we get from Empower is specifically to support the end user finance to be able to buy, and then they pay it in return in form of rent. So instead of going to the bank, because they have no access to the mortgages, and also mortgages take too long, so they like come and then start doing the rent to buy, and then we are able to pay back the investor as we progress. So this will be helpful in also scaling up this scheme, and Casa Real will be in different cities in Mozambique. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. And the same question to you, Patience. What is sort of the vision for the future for the Gungano Fund and for Dialogue and Shelter more generally?
Thank you very much, Bia. The Gungano Urban Poor Fund is decentralized to all the 12 Zimbabwe Homeless People's Federation regions in Zimbabwe. So it's revolving in all those regions. And secondly, the fund is also managed to leverage resources, not only from the city of Harare, but from the city of Bulawayo, the 2nd largest city in Zimbabwe, and also in Masvingo. So we currently have 3 city level funds that are specific for supporting slum upgrading interventions. And what is interesting is that, for example, in one of the city funds, Masvingo, the funds, the initial capital we started with, we've managed to revolve the fund 5.7 times. And I think for Bulawayo at the moment is about 3 times. So we see this as the way to go for all cities in Zimbabwe to ring-fence funding specifically for upgrading initiatives, and doing this together with the people who live in those communities as an alternative to forced evictions. But the scaling up we're also seeing is even within Harare, instead of just concentrating on the pilot project in Zimbabwe, there are other settlements as well that are doing upgrading. A similar model with refined model it's just the refined version of what we did in Zimbabwe. And specifically, some of these settlements include Tafara and also interventions in Hopley. But Gungano Urban Poor Fund is giving infrastructure loans and livelihood loans to all the 12 regions as well. Whether they are supported directly by government or not, they continue to revolve even at the local level. But more importantly is the impact that these interventions, community-led interventions, have had in terms of national policies. The government of Zimbabwe is what is called the national strategy that they are, for the next 5 years, that they are implementing, National Development Strategy 1. And for the first time, they've recognized that we need a framework for slum upgrading settlements. This is the first time that the government is coming up with such a policy framework, and we have been contributing to the development of this framework using the experiences that we have had with the Gungano Urban Poor Fund. And but not only financially, the impact has not only been financially in terms of scaling up, but also what we've witnessed in terms of scaling up is even in technologies that we have used in Zimbabwe. For example, when we started the upgrading project, in terms of sanitation, people were using the bush. And then we started having communal toilet blocks, and we improved on that, and we moved to shared EcoSan Skyloo toilets. And other cities have been coming to learn about these Skyloo toilets, and we've seen thousands being built by communities together with their cities in places like Mashingo, Chegutu, and even rural settlements. So the ripple effect of this development
on avait des installations informelles. Donc, l'effet de ces aménagements va continuer et nous sommes impatients de voir ce que l'avenir nous réserve. Et également, nous sommes impatients de voir comment est-ce que cette collaboration avec le gouvernement du Zimbabwe va se poursuivre.
Thank you, Patience.
Merci.
We have
Merci,
a
Patience.
problem again with the
Je pense que
interpretation
nous avons
because I
encore un
can
problème
hear French
avec
on the English channel.
l'interprétation parce que j'entends.
Channel. Yes, it's good now.
Perfect. Thank you, Patience, for these insights. Same question to Magatte, very briefly, what are sort of what's the future for the revolving fund UrbaSEN and the federation?
Béa, c'est en anglais, je n'ai pas entendu ce que tu as dit.
Tu peux peut-être te mettre sur l'interprétation, sinon
Oui, mais je n'entends plus l'interprète, c'est ça le souci.
Ok, donc très rapidement, juste pour le futur du fonds et de la fédération, quels sont les projets très rapidement, si possible, comme ça on peut passer aux questions.
Voilà, les perspectives en fait par rapport à ce fonds rotatif, c'est de sortir, de passer en fait de la rénovation à la construction à neuf, parce qu'il y a beaucoup de membres des groupements qui ne sont pas propriétaires, qui sont locataires ou hébergés, qui vivent dans des conditions précaires et qui voudraient accéder à la propriété foncière et immobilière. Là, on est en train de les accompagner pour un projet qu'on appelle le projet de la cité FSH, que nous allons...
we are currently helping them with...
les habitants. Oui, un projet qui prendrait en compte des dimensions écologiques environnementales, qui respecterait les principes du quartier, avec une gouvernance genrée qui permettrait aux femmes de gérer
Magatte,
les affaires de la cité.
Magatte, je suis désolée encore une fois, c'est encore pour une interprétation. Ibrahim, maintenant il faudrait que vous switchiez sur le canal anglais. Merci. Pardon, Magatte. On vous entend sur le canal français seulement. Pardon.
Maintenant, je suis dans le canal anglais maintenant. So I was saying that the next step is the AUHF, which would allow the vulnerable community to have access to affordable housing using this revolving fund scheme. But this time it would be with the support of the program for 100,000 houses that is part of the government's program.
Dans la construction, une approche anti-spéculative.
So this approach, this would also have the use of local material against speculation, as we know it, so that we don't turn these
donc avec un foncier qui serait un bien
into zones
et des bâtiments qui appartiendraient aux membres de la fédération. Donc les
people will speculate over housing.
À ces populations qui sont souvent oubliées dans les programmes.
And also this, we also have the populations who are often left out to actually have access to decent housing without having to borrow too much money from the bank. And this is progressing quite well, because in the past 2 years, inhabitants have been able to save and actually buy their own land as part of this pilot phase, where we were supposed to build 150 houses. So these are the next steps, but we will continue renovating houses, and we will continue making this federation an actor that will be proposing solutions at local level, so that it becomes stakeholder in the management of the city's activities. So what you can see here, for example, is the use of clay to make bricks, and these bricks are going to be used in on the FSH site. So these are the next steps for us. We are going to give the inhabitants a role to play in the building and in the maintenance of the city, because they are the primary beneficiaries and they are the first people to be concerned with what we are doing. So we'll be providing them technical support and make sure they have access to decent housing using these rotating fund and this participative financing mechanism.
Thank you very much, Magatte. Thanks to all of you. So I would like now to take a few minutes to respond to some of the questions. Thanks for everyone for the questions you have put in the chat. Some of them were already responded to, but others remain open. So one of the questions that I would invite any of our speakers to react, those who wish to. So we have a question, how do both models or the free models actually ensure that people will be able to afford to pay back their loans? Are there any instances, cases of default? How are these handled? So I would invite any of our speakers, panelists to respond or react to that.
Yes, if I may. Yeah.
Let's have Patience first, and then Magatte, I can hand it over to you.
Okay. Firstly, yes, the incidents of defaulters, because the urban poor funds, we have not designed them as microfinance funds that are punitive in terms of trying to get every cent back into circulation. But it also takes into account the socio-economic circumstances of families. Some people who have borrowed loans, they pass on, they don't have any form of insurance. You end up with children on their own. And the collectives, if in fact, assist in ensuring that the children, first and foremost, their basic needs like food is met. And if they can afford, then they can collectively assist in the payment of the loan. But we have seen some of these loans being repaid after generations. Possibly the parents pass away and the children grow up and they are able to earn an income. So they will come back and repay a loan that has possibly been inactive for years. So an urban poor fund is those unique characteristics. But to minimize the risk of defaulters, the fact that people are getting these loans as collectives is the first step, because they are vouching for each other. So, and also we carry out a number of economic surveys, and we use their saving records as proof of how much they can repay per month. So they can also collectively save towards repayments as a way of reducing the possibilities of defaulters. So if you are looking for a perfect 100% repayment plus profit, the urban poor fund is not the model. But if you are looking at turning each dollar as many times as you can to ensure that you reach as many people who no one else can finance as possible, then the urban poor fund is one of the mechanisms you can pursue. Thank you.
Thank you, Patience, for these great insights and also putting things very straight. Magatte, I think you may complement with a few ideas. We know that the Senegalese revolving fund is based on quite similar principles as the Gungano Urban Poor Fund, but maybe you can draw on some specificities in the Senegalese case.
C'est pas très différent. Je pense que je
Okay, it's not very different, but just to keep it short, actually, I would say that the group is guaranteeing the reimbursement of this financing, because to be able to get this financing, you need to be a member of the group and you need to be a member of the federation. And all these people who receive funding actually belong to a group, and they are in a database, and there is a principle of solidarity within those groups. And this makes it easier for us to ensure reimbursement. But as Patience have said it, you can never have a project with 100% chances of repayment. There's no risk zero. There might be some cases where you may not have access to the payments. So in some cases, for example, the beneficiaries have died and we relied on the families to actually repay the loans. Those are exceptional cases. Also, we have other unexpected contexts such as the COVID-19, because most of these people are in informal activities, professional activities, and with the COVID-19 pandemic, the activity did not actually operate very well. So we try to actually support those people, and we try to make them relaunch their revenue generating activities so that they can actually repay their loan. So it's a cycle, and files are treated on a case-by-case basis. There might be some issues, but we always try to manage them or fix them with the community. So we, for example, we make sure, and people know that if they don't pay, others won't be able to benefit from the financing, and this is sort of a guarantee. And so far, things have been running quite smooth. Thank you.
Thank you, Magatte, for that. And maybe from Richard's side, yes.
Yeah, ours is also about is somehow different, because we have been testing this, and so far so good, we can say, but we can't judge it now because we are still early in the journey. We are completing our year next month of the pilot of the rent to own. The rest of the people have been buying cash, but people who we can call that they are borrowing money, rent to buy, they have been paying, but the only word that the risk verse that we just control is we've been putting on rent to buy houses which are incrementable. So the houses that have still space that people need to construct. So to encourage them that they have to finish payment earlier than the possible time, so they can get more funding to increment their house. And we've been getting this, we've been having good repayment record, but also in the contract, we inbuilt that they are not supposed to change anything on the house before they can complete the payment. And also that one has been encouraging them to make sure that they pay such that they can, in future, if they complete the payment early in time, then they can have the space that they want, or they can come back and get money to add more rooms that they require. So we can't say that it's been like Zimbabwe or Senegal, because we are starting. Possibly we will have them, and in the future we are thinking to encourage the clients to pay insurance. So to make sure that in the future, if there is any problem, the family has had some challenges, then insurance can take over this loan.
Thank you, Richard. I think there's a follow-up question on this, or very much related to what you were just saying. From Branca, she was asking about how long is the rent to buy model? So basically, how long does it take for a family to?
Yeah, so we are putting it in phases. We encouraged them because also we are building incremental houses. So the first phase is 5 years. And then when they complete the 5 years, we review the repayment process, and then we negotiate the second part, to which is then the buy, to pay the remaining of the balance that will be remaining. But we are renting to buy 5 years. We believe some people will not reach the 5 years. Like there are some people who actually came back to reschedule that they want to complete the payment earlier than that. So some have moved down to 3 years, but even early repayment, we don't mind. We don't charge penalties like banks that they normally charge when you want to pay earlier than required. So the ones who were 5 years, they are coming to 3 years, and then we just renegotiate and let them pay so they can access. Our mission is not to really make money. Our mission is to help people access the funding for the houses.
Thank you, Richard. I'm looking at a few more questions here, and some are related more to, environmental aspects or climate change related risks. So we have a question from Mariangela, who would like to know a bit more about how you work in multi-risk environments in the various contexts you're based in. How do you ensure that these, these risks are taken into account in the housing projects? Could maybe Richard, you could say a few words, and then also invite Magatte and Patience if you want to react and complement.
Sure. When I was presenting, I told you that immediately after we completed the showcase of 10 units, we had Cyclone Idai that destroyed 90% of the houses. And so when we talk about affordable houses with resilient housing, normally those two things don't work, but because we even designed, our designs were so good quality to build good quality houses because of the environmental risks that are here in Beira. In Beira before, they had a problem of floods because Beira is below the sea level. And so any amount of rainfall will flood the city. So we knew that we needed to build a resilient home that we will then sell and will be affordable by the urban poor per se, the active poor, people who cannot access funding, mortgages from the banks, such kind of categories. And so we've insisted to make sure that we build resilient homes, and we have had some trainings from Australia, those about the roofs, how to make resilient roofs and how to construct climate friendly homes, because Beira is also hot that if people cannot afford air conditioners, how can they live in their homes? So we put isolation in these homes that even temperatures are cut down, among others. So we also make sure that we densify. Somebody was asking, so how we are able to cut the cost is because we really design densified units that we semi-detach them, and then we make sure that we start saving on the construction itself. The house that is delivered with techniques that we have already cut costs on the construction, and of course we get shared infrastructure cost shared to all these number of units that you construct within the same place. So we design sort of condominiums, and then we have them in the future. They then manage the estate as a condominium as they contribute money for maintenance of the open space and children plays and other utilities like solar if there is a problem with the water. We are also putting boreholes within these condominiums. And so we feel that at most we are trying to make sure that we have climate friendly buildings, and especially we are now integrating the cross-laminated timber and the solar systems. So we hope those are going to be helpful in the near future.
Thank you, Richard. Would either Patience or Magatte, would you like to comment on these aspects?
I think for us, it's firstly carrying out community-led surveys. Data collection that is community-led is crucial in understanding what are the risks for a particular settlement in relation to climate change. Like Richard said, we are also affected by the cyclones. We've had Cyclone Idai, Cyclone Varnai, Cyclone Anna. So we are seeing this, we are seeing the impact of climate change on settlements. So for example, for the Reseko extension, you will see that they prioritized the lining of water drains. The stormwater drains are, they've been given a lot of priority. because the community is, the settlement is prone to flooding. But when it comes to building technologies that are climate change resistant is something that we are learning as we go along in terms of what is the most appropriate technologies and materials to use in a particular project. But we have not even ruled out relocations as well, controversial as they might be. There are some settlements that are very vulnerable environmentally and that have to be relocated to other presumably safer settlements. But we see more of this. Our concern is the investment in these areas is not sufficient to meet the current needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patience. Magatte, would you want to comment on this?
Allô?
Yes, there you go. We can hear you.
Pour la prise en compte des risques, nous, les zones dans lesquelles nous intervenons, principalement le risque le plus important, c'est le risque d'inondation. Et nous avons anticipé par rapport à la cité FSH où nous
avons... The most important risk is floods, and we didn't allow the inhabitants to settle without planning and without setting up of any network in order to take into consideration this floods risk on the site in which we intervene in the suburban area. And this has been restructured. And this is has done with the municipality agency. A part of the population has been displaced. Retention basins have been dug, and we had the support of the communities. They helped to identify the risk areas and propose solutions such as micro projects in order to manage these flooding areas with collective works that helps to leverage or help to manage suburban areas. So we help them to requalify all these and give a new function in order to manage these flooding risks. We can't settle all this entirely because even the government is not able to handle this since 2009, despite the resources it has. But we are managing locally these flooding risks in these neighborhoods with the projects that we have.
Des solutions innovantes de gestion du risque au niveau
management of flooding, and it helps to handle this at the local level. We have to anticipate, thanks to drone mapping, we can have the mapping of flooding areas and manage the works that have been done in order to avoid this flood in some neighborhoods.
Thank you very much, Magatte. Sorry, thank you very much, Magatte. Just changed my channel. So I would like us to invite you to conclude the question and answer session since it's already 5:30 here, and I don't want to keep you up very long. But we see that there's a lot of interest also in the rent to buy model. Maybe Richard, we can also figure out a way of providing a bit more information for the audience after the webinar. I remind everyone that we recorded the session, so we will be circulating the video. Maybe we can take up a few other questions as well from the chat and have our panelists and speakers answer to them. We'll figure out a way to get that information to you. I also see there were questions, on tenure and various other aspects that may be of interest to some of you. So we'll try to navigate those as much as possible after the webinar. So just handing over to Marine for a few concluding thoughts on our learnings and takeaways of today's webinar. Over to you, Marine.
Merci beaucoup, Béa. Merci.
Thank you very much, Béa. Thank you all. Thank you, dear panelists. Thanks to all those who participated in this webinar and who made it possible. I will quickly present 3 or 4 aspects that seems interesting to me and which are coming from the interventions of our 3 panelists. We have seen that the collective funding system allows to bring back the population at the center of the affordable housing problematic while limiting indebtment. We've seen that it's thanks to the involvement of the community by making this, by taking into account this community-based finance without necessarily taking loan from the banks. As Richard said in the beginning of his intervention, the idea that people can't pay is not real. It's actually the systems which are not necessarily in place or which are not necessarily adapted to these people. I'm taking this idea. We have like 20% of a down payment. Don't take into account the volatility of the revenues, like those people selling merchandise, this in the market. And when you lend money to only people who have salaries, it limits the possibilities. So we have various modes of payment like cash, rent to buy, among others, and all these are alternative solutions which help to adapt a bit more. In these various models, we've also seen that the community-based finance was an effective way to involve various donors as well as collectivities or communities. We've seen it in patients model with territorial collectivities, and this will reduce the costs of the capital for the end user. And finally, I will conclude by saying this. Talking about climate change, we've seen that the community-based finance, because we are being always in contact with the end user, we are more in contact with the needs of the population and in contact with the real problems on the ground by integrating environmental considerations. And we have seen how housing could be resilient as possible against climate hazards and how to use eco-friendly building materials. Yeah, so I will stop on this regarding protection of these vulnerable populations in front of climate change and the opportunity that community-based finance is a good opportunity for these communities. I would like to thank Richard, Magatte, Patience, and Béa. Thank you for the moderation. I would like to thank the team of urbaMonde, and I would like to thank Ibrahima and Kwame for their interpretation. It's a difficult exercise. Thank you once again, and then I wish you a wonderful evening. Thank you all. Goodbye.